Hello everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures. Today I have this fun birthday card to share with you, and I also share my favorite way to do mirror stamping as well, and I haven't used my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers in a while, so I thought I'd bust those out again for this one. First I'm starting with the background. For the pond I'm using some squeezed lemonade just to have a little bit of the reflection of the sky in the water. Then I'm using Shabby shutters and pine needles, but the Shabby shutters was just a little bit too yellow. So I'm also bringing in some cracked pistachio just to even that out. The cracked pistachio on its own would have been too like bluish. I did want a little bit of the yellow in there, but those two over top of each other looked really nice. And then I'm also bringing in pine needles just to deepen it up a little bit. Going back and forth until I'm happy with the intensity of the color. Then I'm using a water spray just to add some splatters for added texture. And I'm just blotting that off with some paper towel. Then for the sky, I'm also using the squeezed lemonade at the bottom. Then going in with dried marigold all around the edges. Making sure to match up the intensity of the squeezed lemonade as well. And then I'm going in with abandoned coral, because I wanted to have like a nice sunset sky. Just needed to wipe off my brush so that I wouldn't drag the abandoned coral down too far. Going back in with a squeezed lemonade to blend it all together. And now I'm just adding some splatters of liquid stardust. And I'm just diluting it with a little bit of water and adding it to my background for some added sparkle there. Then I die cut the rustic winter dies twice. All of the trees I could die cut twice. And I'm ink blending them with gathered twigs, the branch layers. And for the backing layer, I'm using walnut stain to make sure that that is quite a bit darker than the front layer. Now for my mirror stamping, I'm using a piece of acetate and the MFT mirror stamp, which is just basically a clear piece of the stamp material. Then I'm using MFT Extreme Black ink, inking up my stamp, and I made sure to line it up in my MISTI. I have the foam pad out. I'm stamping that onto the clear stamp. Then I'm adding the foam piece back in, adding in a piece of white cardstock, and I'm pressing down. I didn't press down quite hard enough. There we go. And then I repeated the same step just to get a deeper colored image. Adding more ink, putting it back into the corners so that it stays in the same area. Removing the acetate again, bringing the foam and the cardstock back in, and just pressing down lightly, not too much, otherwise the lines get really thick. And that finishes off my mirror stamping. Like I said, I wanted to use my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers again, so I'm using Bristol Smooth Cardstock from Strathmore, and I'm adding the number 40 as my darkest shade on the outside edge of my Froggy. Then going in with 44 to blend that out and just add a little bit of a different shade of green. It's not really much darker or lighter, but just to add more depth of color there. Then I'm blending that out with 41. Then I'm going in with number 45. And then I'm going in with the colorless blender just to blend everything together. I'm using the top corner just to wipe clean the colorless blender so that I don't drag any of the color too far out. Then I wanted to add a little bit of blush, so I'm going in with number 26. And again, using the colorless blender to blend that out. And then I'm going in with number 400. I wanted that color to be more of a like jungle green, not like a yellow green, more blue green. Blending that out with number 42. And then going in with a colorless blender. That was just a little bit too blue-green. I wanted a little bit of the yellow in there. So I'm going in with a second layer of the same colors, the 400. Then the, what was it, 42? Blending that out again. And then I'm bringing in a little bit of a yellow-green just to even that out. Number 41, just scribbling a bit, and then blending that out with a colorless blender just to pull the color a little bit more yellow. And then I'm using number 400, number 42, and number 41, as well as the colorless blender for the bottom of the cattails. For the lily pads, or for the lilies, I'm using number 29 as my darkest shade, and then number 22 as my lighter shade, and then blending that out with a colorless blender. I colored the lily pad below in the same combination as I used on the frog. Just making sure that I blend out every little petal. Then going back in with 29, just to deepen up the shadows. Again with 21. And then going over it again with a blender. For the butterfly, I wanted there to be a little bit of a fade, so I'm going with 29, and then 52. And then I'm just using the colorless blender to blend the two colors together, so that I have a like reddish pink to orange fade. I just colored in the body of the butterfly with number 62, I'm sorry, and then I'm using that as the darkest shade on my cattails as well. Then I'm blending that out with number 50, and then going in with 61, and then the colorless blender. For the dragonfly wings, I'm using number 36 and blending that out. And I actually think that I forgot to mention what stem sets I'm using. I'm using Feeling Froggy, and I'm also using the country scenes, and the little butterfly is from the spring scenes. And then for the body, I'm using the number 52, 50, and 55. And then to color in the little pond area, I'm using 67. Then I'm blending that out with a colorless blender just to get a base layer. Then I'm going back in with more of the 67, blending that out again, but that wasn't quite dark enough for what I wanted. So I'm adding a little bit more of the 67, and now I'm going in with 72. And to add more shading, I'm going in with 62, just to add a bit more depth around the shadow areas, and then I'm blending that out with a colorless blender. I'm going back in with 64, just to blend it all together. And then one last time with a colorless blender. For my sentiment, I wanted it to be a birthday card, so I'm using the sentiment from the Feeling Froggy stamp set. I'm so hoppy, and I just masked out the first letters of the word so that I just have the hoppy. And I'm using the birthday from the Garden Fairy stamp set, so that my sentiment reads Hoppy Birthday, which I think is super fun. And then I'm just heat embossing that in white. The cardstock I'm using is my favorite black cardstock, the Hero Arts Pitch Black, and I'm just using my heat tool to heat set the embossing powder, and then I'm using a white gel pen just to cover any areas that the embossing powder didn't quite get. I wanted to add some vellum over the mirror image, so just added a little bit of liquid glue to my finger, ran it over the image, and then added the vellum so that the adhesive wouldn't actually be visible. Then I cut down the country scenes, the pond area, and I'm just adding some liquid glue and adding it to the sky background. Making sure I leave some areas not glued down so that I can still tuck images behind. Then I'm layering the rustic winter trees, just with some liquid glue, and then I'm just adding them to my background to create a forest look. I just alternate them in height so that it looks like it's lots of different wood die cuts or tree die cuts. And for the sides, I just cut off the bottom, tuck them behind the cattail border or the pond border, and attach them as well. Then I'm adding both pieces to a background. And I have an A2 sized card base, and I covered that with Nina Desert Storm, then white cardstock, and then I layered my ink blended piece. Now it's time to add my little Froggy, and I think he's just the cutest. Then I'm adding the mirror image down below, just with some liquid glue. The Froggy is up on some foam tape, or foam squares. I'm just adding the sentiment strip with liquid glue, and all the other images are adhered down flat as well. Just adding some glue behind all of the images so that I don't have to redo the placement. Then I'm using some Nuvo Aqua Shimmer Pen for a little bit of sparkle. Careful not to move the ink because those are watercolor markers. And that finishes off my card for today. Isn't that Froggy the cutest? Oh my god, he's just so adorable. I really had so much fun making this card. Thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me today. I hope you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing for more crafty videos. I will be back soon with a new video and I hope you'll join me. Until then, have a wonderful day. Bye!